Hello, everybody. Good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Let's recover. And my name is Suni, and I'm an addict in recovery, in the process of recovery. Cannot forget that. Today's topic, and I'm going to jump straight off head into it, is step 2. Step 2. But first, we're going to come from step 1 into step 2. Step 1 says, we admitted that we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. And I believe if you go to the fellowship of AA, I believe the word is, instead of addiction, is alcohol. But for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to equate alcohol and addiction the same way, because in the end, the results are always the same. Jails, institutions, dereliction, and death. Step 1, so when we look at step 1, if we look at we admit it, we say we admit it. And if you look at ED, there's an ED at the end of admitted. So you're looking at a past tense. You're looking at an admission in the past. This experience that you had was in the past. And very simply, most people in recovery will connect step 1 to their bottom, as hitting that bottom. And what was the bottom? The bottom was in your last couple days, last weeks, last hours, before you came to a consciousness that drugs and alcohol was killing you. And I'm talking about primary symptoms here. It says, we admitted we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. And addiction is what? Obsessive thinking and compulsive behavior. It's obsessive thinking and compulsive behavior. Over what? And it says addiction. And addiction is anything I want to put there. If I want to put drugs there, if I want to put alcohol there, if I want to put gambling there, if I want to put sex there, if I want to put overeating there. But the bottom line is going to be inside of my obsessive and compulsive behavior. It's going to be where in my thinking. And we said that our lives had become unmanageable. So we were powerless over what? Over our thinking. And it resulted and it manifested in the physical, something we were actually doing, taking part in, for simplicity. That's that powerlessness. No control. There was absolutely no control. I couldn't rational, and when I say control, I mean, even in my mind, I could not rationalize what I was doing. I could not make no sense out of what I was doing, because mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, what? I had become bankrupt. There was no funds in the bank. I wasn't cashing no checks. I wasn't making no withdrawals. No cut, no chaser. And that's with alcoholism and with the drugs, to include the other symptoms that I spoke about. Moving on, that our lives had become unmanageable. And unmanageability in the physical sense, meaning that I could no longer sustain or take care of myself physically. And for those of us that's got some funds available, also what that means is that my living, I was not living at a, excuse me, I could no longer maintain a lifestyle, an effective lifestyle. Very short, very simple. An effective lifestyle. The unmanageability spiritually was the principles that I practiced. The principles that I practiced was not benefiting me at all. Mentally and emotionally, I was bankrupt. I could not fend for myself on all 4 levels. So now, let's move into step 2. When that realization hit of step one, a void took place. And for most people, that void was, what can I do? What can I do? I need some help. Please help me. And some of us cried out to a God. Some of us cried out to the universe. Some of us cried out to whatever it is we believed in. And that's for the agnostic and the atheist that might be paying attention. So that being said, step two came. And I want to go back to some old literature that was in AA a while back. And it was called step two. And it was said, came to believe, came to. Do you see where I'm going with this? Came to believe. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to put that we on there that Narcotics Anonymous added. It says, we came to. Now, if you look at NA literature, it'll say the we means the collective group. The we means the collective conscious. But I'm going to take it a little step farther and say we mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally came to. And where did we come from? We came from step one to that experience where we made that admission. And we came to believe that what? A power greater than ourselves could. And the word could is conditional. That means there has to be something there for this step to work. And a lot of people, could restore us to sanity. So a lot of people, when you hear them say, well, what's the power greater than myself? They'll say God, if they're in religion. And most people are, right? So they'll say, this is the God stuff. Okay, well, let's take that and set that aside. And let's open our minds, because step two, the primary principle of step two is open-mindedness. So let's open the mind and let's take another look at step two. We came to believe. So what happened in step one? In step one, there was a bottom that took place, and it was a change in my thinking. I could no longer rationalize, intellectualize, philosophize my alcoholism, my addiction. There was nothing I could do because a reality set in. And when I say reality, what happened? I was restored to sanity. Bam! I was restored to sanity in the moment in that area. So what happened in step one, step two was already taking effect, because what? The drugs and the alcohol that I was using for right now, the drugs and the alcohol that I was using got me to a point where I could no longer rationalize. And what did I come out of? I came out of denial. So that was another power that restored me to sanity. My denial was broken as a result of what? As a result of the bottom. And I did what? I surrendered. I surrendered drugs and alcohol just for that day. And I'm going to say just for that day. I came into my consciousness that this was no longer good, the drugs and alcohol, right? So let's move on. The power greater than ourselves. And it says ourselves, right? So let's look at the ourselves. So we'll call it the collective consciousness of the group. We're going to take that, we're going to set it aside, and we're going to say ourselves mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Ourselves, the whole collective, the whole makeup of the human being. And the could is this. Now here's the could. If my mind is not open, this step will not work. I had to be open in the moment. Let me back up. In my step one, I was wide open. Why? I came out of denial. I made an admission. We admitted that we were powerless. I made the admission and I accepted it. And then I surrendered. And then I came into recovery. 5 things took place. 5 things took place. From denial to admittance, to acceptance, to surrender, and into recovery. Because this, and the reason why I say surrender is because I stopped fighting. I stopped fighting where? In my thinking. I surrendered my thinking as a result of what? As a result of the bottom. So coming through the bottom, breaking denial, making the admission and accepting it and saying acceptance, that means there was no excuses. And the surrender, I threw my hands up, proverbial. What can I do? That was the open-minded piece right there. When I surrendered, I became what? Open-minded. And the could that I was just pointing out, restored, was no longer there. My open-mindedness to do whatever I need to do in that moment, only in that moment, restored me to sanity about my drug usage and about my alcoholism, my use of alcoholism, because some people like to separate them. But however, the same principles is going to work. And they did work. So what I'm saying about step 2 is this. Unless you don't have a step 2, guess what? You'll never become conscious. You'll never become conscious. You'll never, and let me back up. You'll never experience the moment. Because what? There'll always be some type of rationalization, some type of denial. There'll always be some type of denial present, or denial and some of its synonyms and homonyms. Refusal. There'll be a mental block. So moving on, and I'm not going to stay on this long. So we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So I'm going to take a jump. And if you ain't worked the steps, don't worry about it. Because the steps is real easy. I mean, it's nothing mystical about them. In step 11, it says, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. So first I'm going to stop, take a swig of my coffee, because here, let me say this. A lot of people get lost on the God piece. A lot of people really get lost on the God piece, because when they think of God, they think of a church, a mosque, some type of a temple. But understand this. God is whatever you worship. That dope and that alcohol was God at one point. Oh, yes, it was. Because you what? You prayed to it. You prayed for it. You pursued it. And you gave up everything you could. You sacrificed. So that was a God. So when you come into the fellowship and you hear God and you got a problem with it, then you need to go and look at your resentment. You need to go look at your resentment towards organized religion. And in my book, it ain't no such thing as organized religion. It's a man-made stuff out there. So I don't want to get off on that tangent. So God is whatever you serve. It's whatever you serving. You make your sacrifices to. And that's all I'm going to say. But let that marinate. So it says, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him. And that's why that understand is there. That's for the agnostic and the atheist. Now let me say this. And I know some of y'all gonna tune me out on this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. A lot of us was agnostic and atheists when we walked up in here. As far as the God piece is concerned, a lot of us was agnostic and atheists. We didn't believe it. We might have acknowledged something. We might have said, and that's the agnostic approach. Well, there's something out there, I can't explain it. The atheists say ain't nothing out there. not how you think. But let's stick within the confines of the step. Now, meditation. Only thing meditation is open thought for right now. For right now. And this is the process. I'm going to get into the process of meditation. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say it. In meditation, what I become is one with my environment. One with my environment. That's all it is. I'm relaxing my mind. I'm getting rid of them thoughts, them programmed thoughts that I've had. And let me slide a word in there. The word I want to slide is anonymity. I become anonymous. And my environment around me become anonymous. And we become one. So I sought through meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him. And what is God? I'm just going to say this. It said, as you understand him, and this is my understanding of God, I have none. I have no understanding. How can I understand something I ain't never seen, smell, or taste? All I have is what? Faith. And what is faith? Faith is the absence of fear. Wear that one. Wrap your head around that one. Faith is the absence of fear. And we could put some more stuff out there. But when I have some faith, I ain't got no fear. As we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. And some people equate praying with begging. Well, if you ask your kid, you say, hey, can you go out there and shovel the snow? Go out and wash the car. That's praying because you're asking. Now, whether they do it or not is a different story. Praying is always connected to the worshiping part. Or some people say begging. I don't think it's begging. I pray that you come over my house this weekend. When I say I pray, I'm really asking. My vocabulary is very limited. I only got the GED, right? So I'm asking you with all my heart, my mind, my body, and soul. That's all praying is. And then I'm sending it to a direction. And that direction is to my own understanding. But I'm gonna put something in the game. So let's say we read these books and we go to these buildings of worship and so forth and so forth. And there's a mode of praying. And it's a cross or star in the crescent or Star David or whatever it is. And I point it in my direction. That's just where my energy is going. And what's my energy? My spiritual self. Because spirituality is nothing but energy at the end of the day, like anything else. And it's whatever I'm putting behind it. So what am I pushing it with? My intentions. My intentions. It says, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. And what is that knowledge? And I think everybody online, most people, I ain't gonna say everybody, knowledge is usually, what good can I do? Show me this good that I can do. and the power to carry that out. And the power to carry that out. So I'm going to ask for the power. Why? Because there's other influences around me that can affect my ability to carry that out. And what is that? What has been revealed to me. So let's jump back down to step 2. Step 2, step 11. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. The power to carry that out. Could, and the power to carry that out. I'm joining those two together. Unless I have the consciousness the spiritual awakening that step 2 bring, I would never understand knowledge of his will for us. And we don't have to say it's a his. It's just his. It's just there. It could be a her or a combination of the both. It's just the way it's written. Let's not get caught over semantics. So in step 2, what's happening is, once I get past my resentment and my anger and my fear of quote unquote organized religions, different philosophies, then guess what? And let's look at resentment. And I'm going to actually read it from some recovery literature. Resentment. Resentment is the way most of us react to our past experiences with religion. It is the reliving of past experiences again and again, our experiences with that religion, in our minds. My obsession and my compulsion with organized religion. So I have to get over that resentment. And I'm just saying organizing. Personally, I don't believe in it. Personally, I don't. But anyway, let's move on. So until I get rid of my resentment, I'll never be able to connect with step 11 effectively. So let's do what some fellowships have done. They said, well, we're going to throw step 11 out. Well, okay, throw it out. You might have thrown it out, but your subconscious is acknowledging it. Why? Because number one, you had enough thought in your mind to throw it out. You had enough thought in your mind to throw it out. And you went to the spiritual principle, and you ain't gonna really like this one, resentment to do it. Why? Why do I call resentment a spiritual principle? Because it acted as a power greater than yourself to cause you to do something. In a moment, I'm throwing step 11 out. And guess what? Before I get to 11, I'm going to throw 3 out. What's in 3? We made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. And because it's got the G-O-D word in it, inside that resentment, I said, hey, I don't even need step 3. Because why? The focus and the insanity is on what? Organized, quote unquote, religion, or the hymn. That's in that step for people that have sexual biases. But it's not about the hymn or the God. It's about the end result. That's what it's about. It's only words. But you have to look at the whole context. Praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. So if I throw out step 11, I become unconscious, or I stay unconscious, not become. I stay unconscious to certain aspects that the benefit of this step is going to have for me. And if you notice, well, this is what I notice. When I attend certain meetings with the agnostics and the atheists, a lot of times, guess what they talking about? How they don't believe in God. Oh my God. Usually, if I don't believe in something, I ain't gonna talk about it too long. I just gonna say, well, I don't believe in that. I ain't gonna have no whole conversation on it. Because what has happened is I become obsessed and compulsive in my mind, and the disease have taken over. Because of what? Because of I'm being what? Closed-minded. So my closed-mindedness have become a what? A power greater than myself. And it's pushing my obsession and my compulsion, and there's no step two. So therefore, I can never have an effective spiritual awakening. Oh my God. Did I say oh my God? I'm sorry. And if I can't have a spiritual awakening, guess what? I cannot become conscious. And if I stay in conscious, then I'm in darkness. I'm in spiritual darkness, which is going to cause me to be in mental darkness, which is going to cause me to be in emotional darkness, which is going to result in the physical. I'm angry at somebody. And my ego has taken over. That's right. And if you don't like this, please hit subscribe. I got some new stuff. I got some more stuff coming out. And guess what? It ain't even mine. I just became conscious. And let's look at step 12, by the way. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to addicts and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Now, I'm going to point out something about step 1, and I'm talking about addicts and alcoholics. You cannot effectively carry a message to only a certain portion of the people. To the gays, to the lesbians, to the Muslims, to the Christians, to the Jewish, to the Hindus. It says, as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to who? To addicts. So I'm gonna take this word. I got a word back here. I'm pointing at this word. See me pointing. And I'm gonna put it on the table. Anonymity. It says anonymity. And one of them traditions is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place what? Principles before personalities. So I'm no longer anonymous. I'm not in an anonymous program. If I choose to segregate the very people that needs the help. That's right. I am no longer in an anonymous program. I need to put a name on it. Because three of the most important steps I have isolated myself from. Step 2, step 11, and step 12. So let's take step 2 and bring it all the way up to step 5. We admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. So if I'm not restored to sanity, I can no longer aim my energy or my intentions to a positive force. It's going to go to another force. It's called my ego. And ourselves. Who is ourselves again? Now remember I said ourselves is the recovering collective. When we talk about ourselves, so we're going to take that, we're going to set it aside, and then we're going to come back and say ourselves is mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Now, there's no God there. But remember, I suggested that spirituality is an energy. And there's no good and there's no bad. It's just what is. No good principles, no bad principles. It's just what is. And now, let me say this. Well, you say, Sunni, if it ain't no good and ain't no bad principles, then what is it? So let's look at resentment, anger, and fear. And I already gave a definition of resentment. So let's look at anger. Anger is the way most of us deal with the present. It is our reaction to and denial of reality. So anger is, let me read it again. anger is the way most of us deal with the present. It's the way most of us deal with the present. So once I get angry, I'm not in the present no more. Either I'm somewhere in the future or I'm somewhere in the past, but I'm not in the present. And it says, it is our reaction to and denial of reality. And reality is what? In the present. Reality ain't in the past no more. It ain't in the future no more. It's right now. And when do recovery happens? It happens right now. But check this out. When do addiction and alcoholism happen? It happens right here and right now. But here's the kicker. You can't have all of that at the same time. You either gonna have addiction, alcoholism, or recovery. One of them three is gonna, and actually I equated, what it is I took two big boys, alcohol and addiction, and I combined them. So I ain't fighting two people at the same time. I'm just only fighting one. And I'm gonna call it addiction since it's obsessive thinking and compulsive behavior. The same symptoms, the same primary symptoms as alcohol. And it's not even a symptom, it's what it is, because the symptom is manifested in whatever it is you're using. So that being said, and moving on, like I was saying, you cannot have addiction and recovery at the same. One of them is going to be there. Now, you could be in between the both, but at some point, one is going to manifest through the other. Why? Because when I look at my step one and I slowly move into step two, what became a power greater than myself? It was either the recovery or it was either the principles of recovery, or the principles of addiction. And yes, addiction has principles. And that's why step two is like it is. It's fully principled. And it leads you to a focus of your own understanding. Take the God and throw it out the window. Take the God piece and throw it in the trash can. You still gonna have principles at the end of the day. At the end of the day. And I'm gonna say this, you're gonna have principles in the present. So go ask somebody who have relapse in their story. Look at them and say, hey, what happened when you relapsed? Tell me the story. Let them tell you the story about their relapse. Because relapse is common in both fellowships, ain't it? You got relapse in Alcoholics Anonymous. You got relapse in AA, in Narcotics Anonymous. You got relapse in Fellowship Anonymous. You got relapse in Emotional Anonymous. You got relapse in Cocaine Anonymous. You got relapse in Heroin Anonymous and any other anonymous you could think of. But here's the deal. If you listen to the stories, what happened? Another set of principles came up. Another set of principles came up. If you're on the recovery side, then you have some principles called acceptance, love, faith, surrender, gratitude. If you're on the addiction side, resentment, anger, fear, frustration, anxiety, and the list goes on and on and on both sides. But I ain't gonna say one is good and one is bad because I'm gonna show you why I'm not gonna say that. When you admitted that you were powerless over your addiction, what took place? It was a very negative experience that catapulted you into a positive place. So what I will suggest is you got to have a negative and a positive for the current to go through. Go to your car, if you got one. Take one of the poles off, whether it be the negative or the positive. Turn the key and see if the car starts. And see if the car starts. The car not gonna start. because you got to have both. There's a balance there. There's a balance. So the restoration of sanity will come with the balance. When I hear people, and I'm gonna talk about me, when I hear people, especially with time, and I'm gonna put a time on it, with 5 years or more, and they share about, number one, they ain't sharing about themselves, and I ain't saying everybody. They sharing about cliches, and they sharing about things that's connected to their ego. They can even be sharing about their clean time, or their predecessor, or their old timer, or whatever it is they want to be. They're really in what I call the negative side of the recovery. Now, that's not to say they can't move forward. So let's look at, go back to step 5. We admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. And looking at the exact nature, not the wrong, the exact nature, how the wrong began, because everything has a starting point. And that's what step 5 is telling you. It said, go back to the starting point as far as you can remember. And that's where step 4 come in. It says we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. So I put them all on the table and I look for the exact nature. For the exact nature. And then we jump up into 6 and 7. We were entirely ready to have God, this energy, remove these defects of character. And these is the ones that we wrote down. And guess what? It don't all have to be something negative. You can say, well, you know, I was honest, but I was a very honest person, frank. But I heard a lot of people being frank and honest. But where did that come from? And I had to reach a point where I was tired of it because then nobody wanted to be around me no more because I was too busy running my mouth. So we humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. Well, what is a shortcoming? A shortcoming is a character defect in application or in motion. So I'm gonna wrap it up right here. I don't want to hold on too long, but what will I say about step 2? Unless you get to step 2, none of the other steps will make sense. Unless I understand that resentment, anger, fear, denial are all powers greater than myself, just like love, faith, acceptance, and surrender. And that the most, and in order for recovery to be effective, I have to live in the moment. I have to be present. Let me say this. I said live. I have to be present in the moment with my feelings and my emotions, mentally and spiritually. So I'm going to say this right. A lot of times, what I've been guilty of doing, especially in the recovery process, is putting other people's opinions, letting other people's opinions, putting that before my own intuition. Before my own intuition. See, what happens in the recovery process is that I become intuitively conscious. Of my surroundings, of what I'm reading. And that's that conscious contact. I'm intuitive. I don't have to talk about the God piece. I can just talk about principles. And then let's get past talking. At some point, we got to learn how to live stuff. how to live. So that takes me on to fear. And inside the recovery process, it says, fear is what we feel when we think about the future. It said when we think about it. Think about the future. I'm thinking. Because you ain't gonna never be in the future. You're gonna be in the present right now. So I take my mind and I project it to the future, and guess what? I'm full of fear, anxiety creep in. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't think about your future. I'm not saying that. But when it becomes obsession and compulsion, when the disease of alcoholism and addiction kick in, then I got a problem. When I get to the point where I look more to the future than the present, there is a big ass problem. I'm not living in reality. Oh, anger. I'm angry at the present. Very much angry at the present. And what's behind anger? Resentment. Reliving past experience over and over. Guess where? In my mind, I'm all upstairs. And I have no principles. Look, let me back up. I'm in the insanity of my addiction and my alcoholism. Yes, sir. So wrapping this up, what step 2 is designed to do, among other things, is keep me in the present. Is keep me focused in the present and in reality. To keep me focused in the present, take me out of my past, resolve my resentments, keep me in reality. That's my anger. And it lessens my fear. I get faith. I get faith. And what is faith? Faith resolves the fear. Very simply. So, ladies and gentlemen, people in recovery, if you like what I heard, hit the subscribe button. If you didn't like what if you like what you heard, hit the subscribe button. If you didn't like what you heard, hit the subscribe button and leave me some comments. Leave me some comments. My name is Suni. Just for the day, I'm an addict in recovery. And thanks for letting me share.